evening, Praise Chapel Fresno, and all those of you tuning in. No matter where you're tuning in at, no matter what you're tuning in on, we're just appreciative that you're here with us this evening. We're still in our fast, our corporate fast, just about to wrap this up. Sunday is going to be our breaking day. Apparently, I thought it was going to be Monday, but it's going to be Sunday. I could not be more excited for this Sunday to come. Kind of done with fasting right now. I mean, it's become a real challenge. I really like that in a sense that it's really challenged me to not just stick to a fast because I've promised it, but because of how close it's bringing me to God. But I'm still so hungry for things that I've chosen to give up. So really looking forward to break this fast. My wife said something funny to me the other day. She's like, we shouldn't fast just to break it and go back to the way that we once were. And I was like, oh, snap. Like, she's spitting out things better than I can. And it really reminded me, like, a lot of times we break a fast and we just immediately revert back to what we were doing before. That means our prayer life, our spiritual life, our eating habits, all just kind of revert right back to the way that they were. And if a fast is to bring us closer to God, the closer we get to God, we should change. There should be things in our lives that change, that we enter another realm of heaven and we realize this is where we want to exist, this is where we want to be. So there are things in our lives that should change. We shouldn't just revert back to what we were doing before, that we should continue to press forward and seek to get the gates of heaven. So just remember that. You can obviously tell, like, my mind is all over the place right now because, like, I'm back in the fast where, like, I really can't focus. So just bear with me. You can continue to give to this ministry, this church, this move of God via EasyTithe. That's on your smartphone app. You can find that in the iStore or Google Play. You can also go to easytithe.com, download the app that way, and you can sign in through there. And then if you want to continue to give digitally, you can also go to praisechapelfresno.com, click Give on the menu bar. It's going to take you to a third-party website that we're contracted with. You can give through there safely, securely. Everything works out. It's great. Or if you're only giving, you're not giving in the digital format, we have tithes and offerings envelopes behind each and every one of our chairs if you're joining us on our in-person, and our tithes and offering box is located just outside the sanctuary. Or you can mail in, drop off your tithes or offerings. You can do so by Googling Praise Chapel Fresno, California, see our address, drop it off, mail it in, however you want to do it. We'll get it deposited in a timely manner. Still going through our biblical bios, and as I was kind of going through and reading, the first two people that kind of come up are Samuel would be next, but his story is so lengthy, I'm like, that's going to be a whole thing on its own. And then right after that, you get David, and again, that's a whole thing on its own. I mean, just there's so much that develops who they are in the Bible and what we can learn from them. There's so much there that I'm like, this is almost like series style. So I'm kind of choosing just to do those. That we really don't know that much about, or maybe we haven't paid that much attention to, and pulling from that. So the next one I come up to is Solomon, and this is actually David's son. He's a child born to King David through his wife Bathsheba. So after David kind of gets a little he has some infidelity with Bathsheba, and then he sends her husband out. He has her husband killed through war. He marries her. And their first child is going to die because that is kind of the penalties of their sin. So this is actually the second child that's born with Bathsheba from David. His second son born between them. God took the first son as the punishment. He would be the king that builds the first temple of God in Jerusalem. So God gives those plans to David, but then tells David, you can't build it for me because you have blood on your hands. Your son's going to build it. So David hands those plans down to Solomon. He'd be known for his wealth, for his wisdom, and also for his writings. He has kind of a book of poetry that he's written that's in there. He would be the last king over a unified Israel, as it would be split into two regions after this. You would have Judah, which his son will reign over, and then you'll still have Israel to the north. He'd also be known as the wisest fool who ever lived. As David advances to his age, he accidentally confirms two different heirs to the throne. So he gives it to Solomon, but then there's another one of his sons that's called Adonai. And what ends up happening is when Bathsheba hears of this, she goes into his courtroom and she says, hey, David, you promised it to Solomon. And you told Solomon he would reign after your death. And then one of the priests comes in and says, oh, yes, I do remember hearing that, but guess what's happening? Your other son, Adonai, he's throwing a party on the outskirts of town, and he's gathering followers saying he's going to be king. The city erupts when they find out that Solomon takes his seat on the throne. So the city erupts and all the noises and praises, and Adonai, having his own party in the city, he finds out that Solomon has taken his seat on the throne. And so Adonai, afraid for himself, because in these days, like customary, when a new king took over, you typically kind of wiped out anyone that would hold a claim to your throne. Adonai would certainly be one of those. And since Adonai knew that he was also promised by it, his concern was that Solomon would kill him just because of what David had told Adonai. So he goes up to the temple, and he grabs what's called the horns of the temple, and he just stands there, and he's afraid that Solomon's going to kill him. But Solomon really displays his character with this, because he knows that Adonai has also been promised the throne. So the servants of Adonai come to Solomon. They say, he's afraid you're going to kill him. And this is Solomon's response. This shows his character. 1 Kings, it's in chapter 51, or 1, I'm in verses 51 and 52. It was reported to Solomon, look, Adonai fears King Solomon, and he has taken hold of the horns of the altar, saying, let King Solomon first swear to me that he will not kill his servant with the sword. Then Solomon said, if he is a man of character, not a single hair of his will fall to the ground. But if evil is found in him, he dies. So he's telling him, as long as he comes in with that character that says, I'm just here, I'm going to live peaceably, he says nothing's going to happen to him. But if he has other methods, if he has other things he wants to do, I'm going to kill him. Solomon wasn't interested in petty family feuds, but confirms that if Adonai returns with no other purpose than just to live a peaceful life, he's going to be okay. And Adonai didn't come back for peace. Adonai, definitely he comes in and he tries to make a power move. So what he does is he goes to Bathsheba, and he says, I want you to go to your son, and I want you to ask him to give me a wife, and her name is Abishag. Not a great name, but this would have been one of King David's wives. Now, it was customary that when a new king ascended to the throne, he would take care of all of the wives of the previous king. He wouldn't take them as wives, but it was his responsibility to take care of them. So what Adonai is doing is he's asking Bathsheba to come in and ask him to give Adonai some kind of handle to the throne. It was Adonai's character, or what ends up happening is the previous king, it was Adonai's character that's going to lead to his death, as well as the death and banishment of all of his co-conspirators, as Solomon's kingdom is established. A short while later, God comes to Solomon in a dream and wants to know what Solomon wants from God. So just after he's kind of found out that there's this rebellion that's trying to brew, he squashes it by killing Adonai, by killing all of his co-conspirators. Some of them get banished and told not to leave their homes or they'll die. One of them leaves his home a couple years later, and Solomon is like, I told you not to leave your home. Like, you did this to yourself, and kills him. So God visits him and basically says, ask of me whatever you want and I'll give it to you. And this is how Solomon starts his life off in the right direction. So it's in 1 Kings 3, 7 and 9. He says, Lord my God, you have now made your servant king in my father David's place, yet I am just a youth with no experience in leadership. Your servant is among your people you have chosen, a people too many to be numbered or counted. So give your servant a receptive heart to judge your people, to discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge the great people of yours? So he could have asked for anything. He could have asked for wealth. He could have asked for wisdom. He could have asked for eternal life. Like, he could have asked for anything, because God says, ask of me and I will give it to you. But this makes God so happy. Solomon could have asked for those things, but he doesn't. He asks for the spirit of discernment. He says, put my mind in your mind so that I know how to judge your people according to your will. And God tells him, because he was sincere in this request and not asking for wealth, not asking for the wisdom, not asking for his enemies to be destroyed, God tells him, I'm going to bless you with it anyway. Solomon's only request was to be able to lead where God was calling him to. So as he kind of gets this, Solomon is he's known for his wisdom throughout the land. These two mothers come to him, and One of them has accidentally rolled over on her child in the night, killed it, so she puts a dead baby with another mother and takes a live baby. Once they find out, they have to take it before Solomon. And Solomon has a really unique way to look at this. They come, and the mom, the natural mom, the true mom, she's like, that's my child. And the false mom is like, no, it's not her child. And so Solomon basically says this in 1 Kings 3:24. The king continued, bring me a sword. So they brought the sword to the king, and he said, cut the living boy in two and give half to one and half to the other. I mean, I understand his wisdom, but that just seems a bit harsh. And one of the mothers, the true mother, she begs for the boy to live, even if it means living with the other mother. She's like, don't kill him. Even if he lives, I'll know he lives, but he's with the wrong mom. Just don't kill him. And the other mom's like, I'm not going to have him live anywhere else. Go ahead and kill him. So Solomon, I guess, uses that type of wisdom to suss out exactly who the true mom is, because he says, give it to that woman. Solomon gives the boy to the true mom, knowing that the compassion for the child's life came from a true mother. So Solomon's wisdom is like vastly being spread. Everyone in the surrounding countries is beginning to hear about his wisdom and his wealth. God had kept his word with Israel, and they were all prosperous during his reign. Then Solomon begins to assemble and organize materials and a workforce. It's about 30,000 men to build the temple of God. And then God speaks to Solomon for the second time. And it's in 1 Kings 6:12 through 13. As for this temple you are building, if you walk in my statutes, observe my ordinance, and keep all my commandments by walking in them, I will fulfill my promise to you, which I made to your father David. I will dwell among the Israelites and not abandon my people Israel. So it takes several years for them to build. And like, this is God basically warning Solomon, because he gave the same warning to David. If you follow me, if you keep my statutes, if you follow my commands, I'll be with you, I'll never leave you. And several times David does not keep to it, but he always returns back to God. So God's basically coming to Solomon. He's like, look, don't be like daddy. Don't do what he did. Just do what I'm telling you to do. And I promise you, I will always dwell amongst the Israelites. But it takes 7 years to complete the temple to God's specifications that had been handed down from God to David to Solomon, but a total of 13 years to complete it with all the furnishings, with all the inlays, with all the stuff. If you want like a kind of a really boring read about it, it's chapter 7 and chapter 8. They go on for a long time, and it's basically them just reiterating what the specification that God had given to David and what they did. And then once it's finished, it was only completed once they brought in the Ark of the Covenant. So while they're completing the most holy place and the holy place as well as the tabernacle, once they're completing this stuff, the Ark of the Covenant is not in there yet. So God has yet to descend onto his place. So everyone in the construction field, because I read that someone's like, oh yeah, they say if you ever enter in the Holy of Holies that you would die, but yet they built it. Well, yeah, God hadn't descended yet. So that place was not consecrated yet. It had to be blessed and it had to go through, and then God could descend. So after they finish this, they put the Ark of the Covenant in, they bless it, they anoint it. The most holy place is dedicated by the priests. Then we get this interaction, 1 Kings 8:10 through 11. When the priests came out of the holy place, the cloud filled the Lord's temple, and because of the cloud, the priests were not able to continue ministering, for the glory of the Lord filled the temple. So once God has descended, it's now confirmed that this is where God will exist. Now, yes, it's true that throughout time you find out that it's only one day of the year that it's there. It still shows as God's presence on the earth through the Ark of the Covenant that's held within the tabernacle. So Solomon, after that happens, he exalts God. He blesses all of Israel. Then he prays and thanks God for giving the people of Israel rest. Because before this, you have to imagine, they lived a nomadic lifestyle. They're constantly moving from one place to another. They're taking the Ark of the Covenant with them. They're going through wars. They're being attacked constantly. But now this is the place. So even though they've built palaces and homes, it wasn't rest because God could tell them, let's pick up and move, and they would move. So now he knows that once the Ark of the Covenant is put to rest, once it's inside the tabernacle, in the Holy of Holies, when God descended, this now becomes the land that God has called them to dwell in. So he thanks him for rest. And I found that really interesting where it's like, we thank you for rest. Because I'm like, y'all been building this thing for 17 years. You guys have been in this land for a couple of years, but you find out it is because this is now where God resides. This is where Israel belongs. God appears to Solomon again and tells him that the land is now consecrated, and if Solomon will keep to his will, he will establish his lineage, the lineage of Solomon, as a ruler over Israel for all eternity. And I think it's because God kind of sees something happening at this point. He kind of comes in and he's like, look, you built it, you did well, it's built, I'm here, it's consecrated, this is where we're going to dwell. Stick to my laws. If you believe in me, you'll stick to my statutes, follow my will, and I'll be with you forever. Solomon's wisdom again begins to grow and grow and grow. It hits outer lying kingdoms. The queen of Sheba hears about this, about his wealth and his wisdom, but she has to see it for herself. So she travels down there with a menagerie with all sorts of stuff. She has like 4 tons of gold with her. So that's a huge crowd that's carrying this stuff. And it says when she walks into Solomon's temple, when she walks into where he's king, she's like, her breath is taken away because of not just his wealth, but his wisdom. Because he's sitting there and he's likely talking to people and she hears it. And this is what she says to him. And it's in 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 9. Blessed be the Lord your God. He delighted in you and put you on the throne of Israel because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel. He has made you king to carry out justice and righteousness. So she's a pagan. She worships many gods. And here she's acknowledging that God has done something special here. That Israel's God has done an amazing thing. He would continue to see his wealth expand as well as his reign over the land. He was born in a time of war, but yet he would live in a time of peace. It's about 40 years of peace that they lived through. And all he had to do was follow the laws of God. Solomon couldn't do that. Solomon, unfortunately, would fall in love with about 1,000 women from foreign lands, which was strictly against the laws of God. They are not to marry, they are not to dwell, they are not to do anything with outside cultures, women, and he has about 1,000 of them. And then this is what we hear in 1 Kings 11:4. At that time, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the aberrant idol of Moab, and for Milcom, the aberrant idol of the Ammonites, on the hill across from Jerusalem. He did all the same for his foreign wives, who were burning incense and offering sacrifices to their gods. So he's told, have no graven image. Okay, I broke that one. There is no other God but this. Okay, I broke that one. You're not to marry outside your religion or your culture. Okay, I broke that one too. So Solomon basically breaks everything that he can at this point. So God comes to Solomon and he tells him, because you've done this, the kingdom is now going to be fractured. And it's interesting why he does this. So he says, your son will rule as a king, and I will take it from his hands. He will rule over one tribe, Judah. And he does this, and it says, in remembrance of David, not in remembrance of Solomon, but in remembrance of David. So everything Solomon is promised is because of remembrance of David. Now, David's grandson is getting something in remembrance of David, not in remembrance of Solomon. So Solomon's promise, he's given up his promise because he's broken the laws of God. So God tells him, it's going to be fractured. Your son will rule over one tribe, and the rest of the tribes will still be united, and they will be Israel. And now all the enemies, after this happens, all the enemies begin to rise up and attack Israel. In fact, God appoints another man, Jeroboam, as king over what's going to be Israel, and Solomon tries to have him killed. Solomon would reign over Israel for 40 years before his death, and his son Rehoboam would take the throne, but not for long. Not over all of Israel, because Jeroboam has been ordained by God to be the king. So here's 4 things we can learn from the life of Solomon. Number 1, character will always reveal intentions. It always reveals, and I misspelled that, it always reveals intention. Solomon allows his brother to live peaceably. And he tells him if he's a man of character, nothing will happen. But he doesn't come in as a man of character. He comes in as a man of evil. To attempt to usurp the throne, and Solomon gives a warning that death will follow. Adonai's character reveals his evil intentions almost immediately. Look, pay close attention to those you allow in your life. Their character will eventually reveal the plans they have for you. Not everyone in or around your life wants you to succeed. You got to be careful of who you allow in your life. And someone had told me, and that they took a step in their life in one direction, and they felt like it was the right direction to go in, and they felt like everything was working out. But then as the path started to divide, it became harder and harder just to deal with separating from that person because of what's been emotionally invested. You have to be careful who you allow. Not everybody is there on your path, on your walk with God. Not everyone is there to help you succeed. Not everyone is there. They don't want you to succeed. I think I said that on Sunday, that some people secretly get satisfaction from your stress. Number 2, God may give more than we request. When God visits Solomon and tells him, I'm going to give you whatever you want, Solomon only asks for the mind of God, for the spirit of discernment, to know how to rule these people. And he's a young kid. I'm sure at this point, he says, I'm a man of my youth. I'm sure he was all about the money. I'm sure he was thinking about things he could get, but his only concern was that God give him the ability to judge Israel justly, to judge as God would judge. Solomon's foundation for his life was built on God's direction. Are your prayers centered around you, or are your prayers centered around God? Many times we go to prayer to God, but we speak very little of him. We speak very little to him. We just say, God, I need your help. God, I need you to do this. God, I need you to do that. He understands what you need. What he really cares about is the foundation of your life is built on just seeking to be with him, seeking to be like him, seeking to be able to judge as he would judge every situation that comes across our lives. Maybe instead of praying for wealth or blessing, start praying for discernment and wisdom to manage what you already have. Pray for the direction of God wants you. Pray for the direction of what God wants you to do with what he's already given you. Number 3, your relationship with God affects unbelievers. That can be good and bad. When the queen of Sheba, a pagan, gets around Solomon, her breath is taken away by what is seen, with all that God has blessed him with. A pagan acknowledges the God of Solomon. That is strictly against their religious beliefs. They acknowledge no other God but the ones that they choose to deify. Your relationship with God will affect the lives of all those around you. Again, it can be good or it can be bad. Are you constantly complaining about all the things going wrong in your life and you're wearing a "He is greater than I" shirt? Or are you telling people about what God has done in your life and how everything that has happened or everything that will happen will be used in God's glory for your victory? Do you drive with a fish sticker but you continue to flip people off? That affects unbelievers. Negatively, sometimes positively, we affect people's lives. But I want to be that positive effect in someone's life. When they look at me and they say, I don't see how you can get through this, I don't see how you can manage this, I don't see how you can do it, it gives me the opportunity to say, it was God. This world don't want to hear anything about the name of Jesus. This world doesn't want to hear anything about God. There's a gentleman that's blowing up all over TikTok right now. He wore a shirt that says, Jesus is my Savior. And then it had the coexist symbol, and it had a circle and a slash across. And he was being told that he was soliciting just by wearing a shirt inside of a mall. I have a shirt that says God first. I have sweaters that say that, and I proudly wear them wherever I go. I haven't had anyone tell me like, oh, you're soliciting, but I just thought it was interesting. The world don't want to hear it. The world don't want to feel it. But be that positive effect on someone's life when it comes to God. Number 4, bad company corrupts good character. The first time bad company was revealed through his brother, Solomon does not hesitate to get rid of it, because he knows that if he allows this to sit around, if he allows this bad company to stay here, it's going to breed corruption. So he gets rid of it. But over time, he allows this bad company to continue to grow, to accumulate, and it begins to corrupt his good character, causing God to rise up against him. Be careful who you allow in your life, yet again. Surround yourself, or be careful of who you allow in your life. Their company will begin to shape your character. Surround yourself with people that want to see you succeed. Surround yourself with people that have the integrity to warn you and say, this isn't right. Surround yourself with people that are willing to tell you you're headed down a destructive path, to tell you that they can see what God has called you to be. Surround yourself with the people that cherish you too much to let you fail. See, Solomon surrounded himself with people that all they ever wanted was something for themselves. And we have people in our lives that do this. All they ever care about is getting something from you. And I want to surround myself with people that aren't even interested in that. They're just, what can we do to succeed? What can we do to move forward? What can we do to get to there? But don't surround yourself with a bunch of people that are just there to shape your character into something they want. So that's Solomon. It's really a kind of a warning to Christians all around, is be careful who you allow in your life. Be careful who you surround yourself with. Because most times once you start surrounding yourself with these people, you start forgetting all about it. It starts getting really clouded because it's corrupting your character. Some people say, I felt like I was doing the will of God. Even though it looked like sin, even though I thought it was sin, it didn't feel like sin. Well, no, because you've allowed other people's character to corrupt you. So just be a warning, who you allow in your life. Surround yourself with a group of just strong Christians. I'm not trying to say it just because I'm like, oh, Christians need to stick together, because we are the support system for each other to keep each other moving forward into the will and the destiny that God has put in our lives. So we thank you for tuning in tonight. Remember, you can still give digitally. You can go through the iStore or Google Play and find the Easy Tithe app, or you can go to easytithe.com, download the app. You can give that way. You can also go to www.praisechapelfresno.com and click the give button on the toolbar. It's going to take you to a third-party service that we're contracted with. If you're joining us on our in-person, we have our tithes and offerings envelopes behind each and every one of our chairs, and our boxes just outside of the sanctuary for you to drop it off in, and we'll get that deposit in a timely manner. If you're joining us on our online campus only and you're not using any of the digital methods, you can mail in or drop off your tithes or offerings. You can Google Praise Chapel Fresno, California. You'll see our address to our campus, and just show up there, drop it off. We'll get a deposit in a timely manner. We're here frequently throughout the week. But we love you guys. We thank you. This Sunday, we're going to be breaking our fast. Should be the happiest Sunday of my life. So I encourage you guys, reach out to someone and say, yo, Pastor's going to be happy, so it's going to be a happy sermon, and he's probably going to give us a bunch of jokes and stuff. It's a great time. Just bring them down and then give them some lunch afterwards, because the pastor's going to eat after that. But we love you guys. We thank you for tuning in, but we'll see you guys Sunday, 10 a.m.